Okay, let's continue. Let's stop playing around, right? And instead start actually using this. All right. All right. So just like when we were interacting with a database, right? All data access we were funneling through a DAO. Remember that, right? The DAO was the sole responsible for interacting with a particular entity, right? And it implemented all the CRUD operations for that entity. It was a design pattern that serves us well, right? It was a singleton. There was one point of maintenance, right? If you ever wanted to do anything with a particular entity, you knew exactly which DAO to go and do. Right. So the same thing here. Whenever we're accessing entity information about a particular faculty, a particular course, we also want to funnel all activity, all data access, all network access through one specific entity, artifact that is its sole responsibility is to implement that network access. Okay. So for instance, what we're going to do is that we're going to implement in a directory called services. All service layer logic will go under here, right? So any services, anything that has to do with HTTP and dealing and mapping URL patterns to a particular entity are going to go through services, right? All right. So let's write our first service. And it'll be a user service. So that's one of the main entities, right? A user, a course, a module, a topic, a faculty, all sorts of, all those are entities of interest. So first, our file will start with the entity of interest, right? Or the resource that we want to make available. It'll be followed by the role of this file, right? Just like if this were a data access, maybe it'll be a .dao. Okay. If it's a model that represents some data, maybe this would be .schema or .model, right? Just like we did for the in the data layer. Yes. And then this will be a server. So this is on the server. There's a service layer on the server because we could have service layer on the client as well, right? So this allows folks to immediately look at this file and know exactly its role, right? Where am I, and position myself, right? And whatever naming convention your particular team comes up with, just stick to it, and so the team can grow and improve as a team. All right. So as here in the service, what we're going to do is that we'll need Express, right? We'll need to load Express. So there's two ways of doing it. Notice that Express is way out here, right? It's way it's being instantiated here on the server.js, right? And we don't want to reinstantiate that, right? It's not a singleton. So we can do a couple of things. We can pass it along, right? We can pass it along to the service layer, or we could package Express in a single file, right, and make it a singleton, right? So let's explore first passing along the instance, right? Let's do that. So what we're going to do here is that we're going to create a module, and we're going to export a function that's going to receive an instance of Express. App is going to be the instance of Express that was instantiated way above me. Okay, I'm just going to pass it along to the module as an argument. Yes? All right. So let's do that. In the server, we can say require from the service. From the services / the user service. Okay, that's the user service. And then I can say user service is a function because that's what this require is exporting, right? The function. So now user service is the function. Yes? And I'm just going call it. I'm going to pass app. Everybody okay? All right, this just it's behaving like a constructor. I am constructing, instantiating the service, and I'm passing it an instance of the Express middle tier. Everybody okay? All right, so now I have app here. Now I have app here. I want to listen to things such as incoming requests for what? I want to retrieve all the users. That's something that makes sense, right? I want to retrieve all the users. Is that a normal case? Well, maybe for an admin user, right? For an admin user, I want to list all the users. But if you're a logged in user, typically you don't get to list all the users. Well, I guess if you're Facebook, you can get a list of folks if you just search them, right? Anyway, typically you would have to decide whether you want to expose this to everybody, right? If this API should be exposable to anybody with no credentials, or you need to log in to access this, right? Another thing that we typically do is that typically servers not only host data, they also host static content, right? Like HTML and CSS and JavaScript. Middle tier servers host all sorts of resources, right? They host static content, plus this particular server is going to host not only static content, but it's also going to host dynamic data that we're going to retrieve from a database. Okay, so to distinguish whether you want static HTML, static CSS, static JavaScript, and distinguish whether you want data instead, right? What we're going to do is that we're going to prepend here, prepend in front of this entity that we want to deal with. We're going to prepend /API. Okay, and this is a naming convention. So that we distinguish regular queries for static content from a data access that we want to retrieve, right? Like a list of users. Make sense? All right, awesome. So what I want to do here, we're going to map this user to a find all users function that doesn't exist yet. So let's create it. So here's our function, find all users. So how do we do this? So remember that this find all users receives a request and a response. Yes? So this response might be response.send. Here are all users. Okay, let's see if this works. All right, let's restart the server. Okay, it didn't blow up. That's good. If we say API/user, notice that it returns the text that we were expecting. Everybody good? All right, awesome. So what we actually be looking for is actually not this, right? Ideally, we would like to be able to retrieve return some array of user objects, right? With maybe a username, Joe, right, and some other user. Oops. Jane. Oops. What? Copy. And Jane. Okay. If we restart the server, if we refresh, notice that what we get now is not plain text, right? We have JSON, right? Text that is formatted as JSON. Notice that my browser detected that this was JSON, right? And it formatted it for me. Actually, the real content is coming back from the server. It's just plain text, right? With the difference is that if you inspect and you look at the response that comes back from the server, we refresh. We see that the raw response is just plain text, right? But it's being interpreted by the browser as JSON. Okay. Now if now send the send function here, it's a fairly generic function that allows you to send anything, plain text. Allows you to send HTML. It allows you to send XML, JSON. It allows you to send files. It allows you to send all sorts of things, right? So it has a little bit of overhead trying to figure out what to send back, right, based on the arguments that you pass it. Okay. If you know that the data that you're going to pass is actual JSON, right, it's better to use the JSON function that makes sure that the headers are correct, that the MIME types are correct, right, and that this is indeed formatted correctly. So if we restart and we refresh the user, we get back the data the same way. Okay, everybody okay? All right. Now this notice that I'm putting it inline here, but this certainly could be some var users, right? And just pass in users. Or better yet, this would be what? Ideally, this would be from a database, right? Ideally, this would be from a database. So let's do that instead, right? That would be much more exciting. So let's do that. So what do we have for we'll do that next.